Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Morones Patel, and in this presentation, I'm going to talk about meaning based approaches with a particular focus on second language pragmatics. Uh, the main idea of this presentation is to translate meaning based approaches, as I said, into practical applications in the language classroom. So, I will start the presentation with a brief review and summary of approaches and topics that we covered this week. And then I will show you how I combine pragmatics and aspects of these approaches in a lesson plan. All right, so here we have to remember that all the approaches that I'm about to describe consider meaning as an essential element. For instance, the functionalist approach, here language is learned through meaning, use, and communication. Functionalists see form as something that emerges from use, and this approach focuses on meaning and context and communicative functions. For functionalists, real world experiences are very important. Then we have the aspect hypothesis, which links the learning of L2 meaning and form. In other words, they they consider that the meaning of verbs guide their use of grammar. So they consider that the meaning of the verb is very important to understand its use. All right, so another approach is cognitive linguistics. So here, meaning is based on real world experiences, conceptualization, or how we organize and understand our experiences in order to express them through language is a very important term. A metaphor and meaning is embodied. So the linguistic forms here are related to the concepts they convey to the meaning, and lexical items have more than one meaning, and grammar meaning is often abstract. Okay, so here I wanted to include the term cross linguistic comparisons because I find it very interesting and useful, especially in the classroom, because students can compare meaning in their first language and second language, and they can also become aware of the different aspects that can be used, especially in terms of pragmatics. There are pragmatic items that can be translated, and there are pragmatic items that are completely different. So I think through these cross-linguistic comparisons, students can become aware of pragmatical differences between the L1 and the L2. Um, Thinking for speaking was an important concept in the meaning based literature because it's the idea of how speakers organize their thoughts when they are preparing to talk or preparing to speak those utterances. So, considering that, we can say that um, whatever we say or whatever we think, sorry, is shaped by the language we use. So, all right, so L2 pragmatics. Pragmatics refers to context dependent aspects of meaning, and in particular, the communicative intent of speakers, the social relationship between them, and the speech acts they wish to perform. In L2 pragmatics, there is an interest in speech acts, which L2 learners carry out, the understanding of politeness governing interactions in different settings, in different contexts, and the linguistic means they use to achieve conversational goals. So I'm sure that throughout our experience as language teachers, we have plenty of examples in which students use sentence that is grammatically correct, but something sounds awkward or it's pragmatically wrong, right? So to avoid these kind of problems, pragmatics should be taught, and our goal as language teachers should be that students develop pragmatic competence. So, all right, so before showing you the lesson plan that I created for this presentation, let me just quickly go over this framework by Bartleby-Hartley. And she mentions that in order to understand the relationship between second language acquisition research and research in pragmatics, there are 5 aspects that we need to consider. One is tasks as conversations, and here she mentions that pragmatics is studied through tasks such as role plays. These tasks allow simulations of real interactions. She also talks about implicit and explicit knowledge. So basically, pragmatics should be taught explicitly, and then students should be able to use this new knowledge in an explicit way in conversations. Measuring development. This is the assessment of different aspects of pragmatics. And then she also talks about grammar pragmatics interferes. So she says that learners need grammar and vocabulary to express appropriate meaning and context. So somehow grammar, vocabulary, and meaning are all linked. And finally, she talks about the effect of environment. So interaction and exposure influence how learners develop pragmatic competence. All right, so let me show you this lesson plan that I have used before, but I modified in order to incorporate new aspects that I learned this week. And the topic of the lesson is refuse an invitation, the proficiency level of students. This is intended for intermediate L2 Spanish learners, college students, and this is the lesson plan. So basically, the lesson plan is divided in 2 parts. In the first part, we have listening comprehension, and the first activity in this first part is vocabulary task. So I created a worksheet, and then I took screenshots of the different sections of the worksheet. So I'm gonna have to translate and also describe the different activities. Okay, so activity 1, a vocabulary task to activate students' language schemata and expand their lexical knowledge. So basically what they do here is so we are going to use a real phone conversation that I recorded between 2 native speakers. And in order to understand some of the words, I asked students to use Google Images and type the word into Google Images and then see the picture, and then come back to the activity and match the phrase or the word with its definition. All right. So the second activity is the listening part. So students listen to a real phone conversation between 2 native speakers, and while listening, they have to answer these 4 questions. What is the intention of Vicky? Vicky is one of the interlocutors in the conversation. Does Mirza accept or reject the invitation? Mirza is the other interlocutor. Does Mirza respond directly with no? And number 4, why do you think Mirza responds in such a way? So it's very important to pay attention to this activity because these questions promote reflection and awareness, helping students notice how language works in context. So the purpose here is that students get the idea of the pragmatical items that they're about to be introduced to. So this activity aligns with Bartleby-Hartley because she emphasizes pragmatics should be studied through conversation like tasks, not in isolated sentences. And well, just to mention that this activity focuses on context and meaning in use. Okay, so then in part two, students identify pragmatical strategies, and they kind of make use of a cross-linguistic comparison here, responding to these two questions about their own language. How do you respond to an invitation in your first language? And then they have to write 3 expressions they use to reject an invitation, and what is the easiest or most difficult part of rejecting an invitation. Okay, so then the next activity number 2, students listen to the conversation again, but this time they have to fill in the blanks with some missing information. So the missing gaps show strategies used to reject or avoid giving a positive response to the invitation. This is important for students to notice the pragmatical item that we are about to study. Okay, so in these 3 activities, students analyze the phrases that one of the interlocutors use to reject or don't give a concrete answer to the invitation. So in the first activity, students have to categorize the phrases into phrases that the interlocutor used to accept, or phrases that the interlocutor used to reject the invitation. Then from the phrases that she used to indirectly reject the invitation, they have to categorize those phrases into strategies to delay the answer, indirectness, and explanation or justification. And then in the last activity, they are provided with with additional words and expressions that can be used to perform similar pragmatical situations. Okay, in the next activity, we work a little bit with politeness by analyzing Vicky's responses to Mirza's refusal to the invitation or rejection to the invitation. So here students develop awareness of how speakers mitigate imposition and respond appropriately to refusals. Okay, so the final activity is a role play. So students finally get to use all these new knowledge, these new strategies in a role play that help them create a conversation. And at this point, they are aware of, they have explicit knowledge of different pragmatic strategies that they can use. And of course, they are expected to use all these strategies in an implicit way during the interaction. Okay, these are my references. Thank you.